Welcome to Iron and Ceramite, Librarius Omnis, where we explore the depths of the Black Library.
Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Librarius Omnis, where at the moment we're going through Battle for the Abyss, next part in the Horus Heresy series. Obviously we're going through all of them, a grand undertaking, as I'm sure you can agree, and this is up to part 3, and I'm joined of course by John.
Hello.
And we were just discussing that in each one of these book reviews we've done so far, we always start off optimistic and like, it'll be a 1-2 parter, and they always go on to be 3 or 4. And as time has gone on doing this one, it transpires that this is likely to also be a 4-parter. And the reason being is there's just in every one of these books there's a lot to unpack. This one obviously is slightly different to the others in that it's very much in the mold of a 80s 90s action movie, as opposed to maybe the more serious tones of the earlier books, but for that reason it's quite a nice palate cleanser, and it's a lot of fun. So before we go into a recap on parts 1 and 2, John, is there anything you want to add to
that? No, not really. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like you said, it's fast paced. That's why we thought this would be a 3-part max, and then we sat down, just recapped what we thought the next quarter would be. I was like, there's no way we're doing all of this, because I mean we could, but we'd miss a lot of fun in this last 2 parts. There's like a lot more action scenes, monsters to fight, and then obviously some Space Marines and stuff. And I think we service if we tried to pack it all together, and we'd miss. It wouldn't make sense, would it?
No.
Why cut it short now? We're 8 books in, and we love dragging it out. It's good fun.
Absolutely. And so on that, before we get into part 3, we'll do a quick overview of what we've gone through so far in parts 1 and 2. Obviously, you can go back and listen to those beforehand. If this is your first time listening to anything from Iron and Ceramite, go back and check those out. Maybe check out some of the other pods as well. It's all very entertaining. But in this one, so in part 1, we were obviously introduced to to a couple of all of the ships in play, because this is a very nautical sort of themed edition. And we found what was unveiled was the Vengeful Abyss, a custom Mechanicum built battle barge, the likes of which had never been seen before. Obviously built in secret for the word bearers. For their treachery, or what would go on to be revealed as treachery. And in the opening parts, they take out an ultramarine ship, Glory of Macragge, or the Fist of Macragge, wiping out what would effectively these days be a chapter of ultramarines, but I think it's 1,000 ultramarines get wiped out, and they are then set upon. They are chased by a ragtag fleet that goes after them. In the first part, that fleet is pretty much destroyed, and the last remaining ship, the Wrathful, gives chase as the Vengeful Abyss heads onto Macragge, or what we believe to be Macragge, to lay waste to the Ultramarines' homeworld. There's as I said, a ragtag bunch of Marines that are in this fleet. So there's an Ultramarines honor guard led by Cestus, who's commander of the 7th Company, and he commandeers Rear Admiral Kaminska's ship, the Wrathful, from the Saturnine fleet. And there's a bit of tension between those two, as obviously she doesn't like her ship being commandeered, and they engage and then give chase. But also you have Skrull and his World Eaters. I think they've got about 20. And likewise, you've also got Bringar and his Blood Claws, also of about 20. So I think there's about 50 odd Marines all in going after this massive ship, the Vengeful Abyss. And then we also have Motep, who has had his own ship at the beginning, the Waning Moon. But by the time we get to this part where we're reaching now, he is very much alone on board the ship. So that was part one. We get introduced to this lot, and then we see the first sort of opening battles. We understand the power of the Vengeful Abyss, and you know what's actually happening. Then we get into part two, where we get a bit more detail on everything. We get a bit more of the relationship between Kaminsky and Cestus, as well as the tensions between what are seen as Loyalist Marines at this point. We get a bit more information on the word bearers as well, and the incredibly ambitious Zadkiel, who's definitely not to be crossed as the leader or the commander of the Furious Abyss, who definitely, you know, he is wary of everyone under his command, even those that are very apt, because he will happily send them to their deaths if he thinks they're encroaching upon his power and his command. And we see that come up in this particular section. As I said, the chase continues. There's a bit of warp shenanigans early on with one of the old crews from one of the other destroyed ships coming back. Firebird. Anyway, doesn't matter. They come back, and there's all sorts of warp shenanigans going on. There's a bit of tension between Motep and Bringar. Bringar obviously does not, as a space wolf, does not like the witch as he sees it. Motep likewise doesn't. You know, there's not a lot of love lost there. So there's a lot of tension happening there, and it all comes to a bit of a head where they finally realise that the Vengeful Abyss has to set down in the spaceport, or the shipyards of Baccarat?
I think we just called it the Backer Docks, didn't we?
The Backer Docks, that's it. Backer Triumphant. So the Backer Docks, because of one of the shots that I believe Motep managed to do before the waning moon was destroyed, was they knocked out some cooling, which means that the Furious Abyss has had to have an unplanned stop at the Backer Dockyards. And whilst this has been happening, the Ultramarines, or our ragtag group, have launched a audacious bid to try and take the ship out whilst it was docked, and we kind of pick the action up. We realise what's happened is right at the end of the second part is Skrull, Antigues, and a couple of the other honor guard have managed to get on board the. It's just Skrull.
Skrull and a couple of World Eaters.
It's the World Eaters and Antigues get on board the Furious Abyss. Bringar is unable to get across the melee, the battlefield, but he does manage to take a prisoner, who is the word bearer Altus, which we find out very shortly, and he drags him back on board the Raffle to try and obviously get some information from him, and we're left with Antigues and Skrull and the other World Eaters fighting their way through the Furious Abyss, but a very losing battle. With unfortunately Antigues being mortally wounded, and Skrull deciding he's going to continue to fight on and try and find a way of causing more damage to the ship, knowing that this will be his last engagement. And that's where we get to now, I believe.
That's it, yeah. So that brings us into the third part of our story now, chapter 11, Survivors, Aftermath, and I Will Break Him. So, as you said, everyone's a bit scattered now. Cestus is still on board the Raffle, waiting for all the survivors to return. Out of 3 battle boats that deployed, only 1 has returned. And as it docks and the doors open, Bringar and the Blood Claws emerge, and Cestus approaches and says, "Well met, son of Russ," to which Bringar just grunts, barges past him and walks off, and the Blood Claws bring out a prisoner bound in chains, wearing the armour of the Word Bearers. He's then directed down to the isolation cells, and Bringar says that he's going to find out all of his secrets. And the Space Wolves walk past the Ultramarine and completely ignore him. And Cestus even shouts at him to try and get an answer, but Bringar's sick of him not playing ball.
Yep.
So essentially, like the assault failed. The assault failed. The Furious Abyss still lives, and that is the only report that he's going to get from the Space Wolves. And obviously, he gets told that a couple of them managed to get on, but we're not sure if they're still alive.
Yep.
And they march off. So Cestus grabs his apothecary, and they follow behind the Space Wolves and Altis. And Cestus knows that Bringar is going to be torturing the word bearer, and for a moment he thinks about stopping him because the idea of a battle brother being mutilated doesn't appeal to him. He's still an Ultramarine, but quickly realizes that this isn't a battle brother, this is an enemy that they're dealing with, and holds back. On arrival, there's a Bloodclaw guarding the cell door, and the Bloodclaw hesitates for a minute, but then backs down and lets Cestus in. So the tension between the two parties is definitely there. And they let him in, and Cestus goes in to find Bringar completely stripped out of his armor, just in his underrobes, leant over the word bearer. And Bringar snaps him and demands to know what he wants. And Cestus says, "I'm going to speak with you." And then realizing sort of the mood of Bringar, backs back a little bit and says, "Once this is over, I want to know everything," and steps back. So Bringar relaxes with that and says, "Look, I'm going to break this prisoner." And Cestus says, "Okay." And in a peace offering says, "You can keep the apothecary with you to help you out." And the apothecary is not too keen, but does as he's told, because obviously he's Ultramarine, and this is sort of what do they call it? It's like savage behaviour.
Yeah,
they're not kin to. With that, so Cestus leaves them to break him. So the Abyss has a head start on the raffle. It's jumped into the warp, and the raffle sort of, now everyone's back on board, gets into position, jumps back in an attempt to follow and catch up. On the Furious Abyss, Zadkiel, he's in the morgue, looking over the bodies of the fallen word bearers as they're laid out, and obviously waiting for the gene seed to be harvested. And Rezkul enters whilst he's praying and asks about Balanos and Altis. And basically is told Balanos isn't dead, he's severely injured and he's not going to recover, but we'll find a use for him yet. And Rezkul will take his place in command, and then he's told that Altis died on the docks. Rezkul's still in a bit of a state though from his encounter with Skrull. He's lost one of his hands, and the side of his skull was fractured, where he took I think it was the axe to the face. And now he's had a bit of surgery, and he's got a metal plate on the side of his head now. So he's just as handsome as he was before. And Rezkul suggests, look, why don't we take this opportunity to turn the raffles following us? We could turn around and destroy it, but Zadkiel, for some reason that we've seen time and time again, is like, nah, we're just going to keep going. That's a waste of time. They're not worth our time, even though, like, clearly, like, they've not trumped them every time they thought they had, because they had to stop at the docks. But he's still got a big head, and they're going to keep on and ignore them.
Yep.
And Zadkiel orders Rezkul to go find the World Eater and kill him. And once he's left, one of the Magos from the Mechanicum emerges from the shadows and said they have received Balanos. And Zadkiel tells him to begin the rebirth. And we'll find out a bit more about that later on. Cestus returns to the holding cell, back on the raffle, and he gets no resistance from the Bloodclaw this time. And when he goes in, the apothecary is looking quite pale, and stood to the side. And Bringar is absolutely like covered in blood. The word bearer is a complete mess. I think there's like blood sprayed all over the ceiling, and it's just like, it looks like a butcher shop.
It's a pretty grim sight. Yeah.
Yeah. And they say basically like, Bringar's give it his all, but this guy hasn't broken. He's not said a single word. He's not even give us his name. And Cestus decides the only option now is to release Motep and get him to help. And the only response he gets from Bringar is an angry roar, because that's how mature adults speak to each other. They just growl at each other. So Motep, he has been sat meditating the entire time in his lockup, but he has been following the events in his mind, and he's not surprised when Cestus enters. Cestus tells him the interrogation failed, and he wants to use whatever power Motep possesses to find out what and how the word bearers plan to do. Obviously desperate now. Motep tells him that the word bearers have made a deal with chaos, and were warned by those who dwell in the warp that they're protected by those that dwell in the warp. And Cestus is shocked and trying to understand like what's he talking about, because we've come across it a few times now, but for these guys, living creatures in the warp doesn't exist.
It's not a thing.
No, it's like unheard of. And he sort of like, well, if the word bearers know this, surely like, do the Primarchs know? Do our Primarchs know? And Motep tells him that it's complicated, but I've promised I'll fight alongside you, and I'll just do what you need to do, and we can figure it out later. And he said, what does Bringar think of me getting involved? And Cestus says, don't worry about it. That's my job to deal with. So Cestus goes to the holding cell with Motep, and Bringar storms out in disgust. And Motep says, once I go inside and it begins, don't come in, no matter what you see or hear.
Yeah.
And Cestus warns him, if he sees anything he doesn't like, then you'll be killed on the spot. And I think like at this point, it's like Cestus doesn't really know what he's doing anymore.
He doesn't. It's all a bit out of control.
Yeah. And he's just like, well, we'll see where he goes. I think like that threat to Motep, he doesn't know what he's going to see. Like he's not, it's such an empty threat, but he's desperate and he's got to look like he's in command. I guess trying to salvage some relationship with the Space Wolves.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one for him, is it? Because he knows, like, underpinning all of this is the fact that he has seen a vision of Macragge.
Yeah.
And he needs to know this plan, but he can't admit to be believing in a vision, because then he's a witch.
Yep.
And yeah, it's this desperation that he needs to know because it's his home world, but at the same time, in knowing and being proven right, then he's potentially going against the Council of Nicaea and everything that it stands for. And if it's been Bringar's way, Motep would probably be dead by now anyway.
Yeah.
But Bringar isn't right in this instance. They do need psychic help. Definitely.
Because what else are they going to do other than following behind? They've got no plans. Obviously, their attack didn't work. They've got even less numbers now. So just make best of the tools they've got.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. So with that, Motep enters the cell and gets to have a look at the new redecoration, and he stands by Altus's head and says, "You can't hide from me." Places his hands on his head, and that is when the screaming begins. And that will push us into chapter 12, Sirens, Screams and Silence, and Here Be Monsters. Outside the chamber, the Ultramarines are watching, and they're sickened by just the screams coming out. They're unhuman-like, and Cestus has to resist the urge to put a stop to it, and he has to warn off his own battle brothers a few times. After a while, Saphrax calls him on the Vox, telling him to come to the bridge because they're under attack.
Mm-hmm.
Several projectiles were released from the abyss. First, they were believed to be torpedoes, but their movement shows that they are actually living creatures or sirens. Kaminska was shocked, stating they thought that these things were just a myth, knowing that they can't avoid this collision course, Cestus has the honor guard assemble back on the assembly deck and try and figure out how they're going to fight off these warp creatures coming towards them. So Brinska's obviously a spacefaring captain her whole life, I guess. I don't know. I don't think we find out how old she is. I don't know if she's...
They talk about the fact she's had like loads of rejuvenation and like things and stuff like that. But
yeah,
you know, it's one of those. I think she's going to have a long life.
Yeah,
she's not. We know she's not void born, so she's not always lived in the void. No. But she's definitely, as part of the Saturnine fleet, like they are very, I suppose, nautical in their outlook.
Yeah, so she's been in countless battles, been all over the place, and like you say, these warp creatures are just myths of like sailors, like the same on Earth when they say that, like the Loch Ness monster or things floating about, giant
kraken.
Yeah, the kraken, that sort of thing. So now, obviously, it's like the equivalent of these things coming towards you in space is just as terrifying. As we've already sort of covered, the warp is like unconceivable to a normal man. If you look into the warp, it will turn you insane.
Yeah.
The only people that can look at it are specialist mutants who have this third eye, and even they can't describe what they're seeing. It's like just noise, color, like you're overloaded with like emotion, and all your senses are overloaded, and that's what essentially the warp is. But the best description we get of these creatures are they're like shark-like creatures, completely covered in eyes. And although they seem like they're coming in a straight line, they're actually coming from all directions at the same time.
Different times, space, all sorts of weird descriptions.
Yeah. And they even change shape on the way. They go from having wings, claws and fangs, but they're constantly shifting. The only thing that remains is the eyes. And these creatures feed on scraps of emotion, powerful enough to find themselves even in the warp. They can't sense the souls on the raffle and are hunting for a way in. But the Geller field is what's stopping them from bursting on board until one of the creatures discovers a particularly weak and vulnerable soul. And that is their gateway in. On the ordnance deck, one of the workers, or what they're called is gangers, is working on the laser system, and he plummets off a railing and crumples down onto the floor. And the ganger boss is pretty not bothered by this because people fall off and die all the time.
It's not very sympathetic. He's like, it's just another problem. Like, it's like, now we're going to have to replace him.
Yeah, it's like, someone's died, but it's more of an inconvenience to him because now he's got to do paperwork.
Yeah.
So he goes over, like, ready to get this body ditched out the way. And as he gets there, he realizes this guy's still alive. And that's even more annoying because now he's not got a death to sign off. He's got a severe injury. And this is going to cost him time and effort getting him off the deck.
Even harder to deal with. So it's like he's even more inconvenienced that this person, because now he's got to at least, he almost wished he died because then he wouldn't have to take him to medbay. Yeah.
And now he's probably just going to wish he was a little bit more sympathetic because the body starts like writhing on the spot in a really unnatural way. Bones are cracking and crunching, and it sort of moves back into a standing position, and then its lower body like splits in half at the groin and rips itself up, causing a huge arch. And then somehow, like in between this black like nothingness appears. And through like this twisted darkness, a predator pushes its way through.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know if he was annoyed that one of his workers was dead. Like, I don't know how he's going to feel when this thing reaches out and rips his face off.
I think he's probably changed his mind quite considerably based on, you know, I can only imagine the total terror that's probably overtaken him in the face of seeing this thing.
Yeah. So Cestus and a fully armed honor guard arrive at the lance deck. A little bit too late, and they're stopped in their tracks by the sheer horror of what they're seeing, described as like a living hell.
Yeah.
And it even like causes Cestus to briefly like doubt whether the imperial truth is a lie, and like all these suppressed religious types may actually have a point. But he crushes the thought because that's heresy and gets to work. and like the bay is like absolutely just like covered in flesh and blood. Skin has been layered over everything as if like it's being used as a dust sheet. And like those left alive are swarming in a mass of flesh, like tearing into each other. And the above this like bloody orgy is like a black twisted spectre, manipulating the living into more twisted horrors. I think as we saw with like the Fireblade, it's like ghostly tentacles reaching into stuff like a horrible puppet show. So Cestus gives the order, and the honor guard open fire. And then the sheer volume of bullets and explosives are enough to start breaking the connection the beast has on the corpses, which roars in anger, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth and a long spear-like tongue, which lashes out, spearing one of the Ultramarines through the chest.
Is it the dude with the heavy bolter? Is he the one that gets speared? I know, I know because they've got some. They've got the flamer guy here as well, haven't they?
Yeah, there's a few. I think the first one who goes is unnamed Ultramarine number 6. So essentially, like this guy gets it through the chest. Whatever weapon he had, it didn't really matter in the end. And Cestus gives the order. He's like, "Let's burn this thing." And the Marine with the heavy flamer steps forward, immolating. We learnt that word in Legion. The creature in fire, causing it to scream in agony and back off. The space wolves hear the alerts and make their way to the scene. Strange that they weren't there in the first place, or called upon in the first place. Like just showing like the tension, where even though they've got this monster coming on board again, we'll handle it without them.
I don't know. I mean, it might have been that they weren't really aware of what they were dealing with.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
But even so, yeah, you would have thought that they would have been like, at least put them on notice. Like, we're going to go and check this out. We might need you.
After the events with the Fireblade, if I had 10 Ultramarines or 20 Ultramarines, I'd be walking around in a conga line. Like you wouldn't split up. Like like what's the point? Like I'd be terrified. Like if one of these ghost things come back on, like I don't want to be on my own or outnumbered. You just take everything.
They know no fear. It's okay.
Well, and that's why that guy got speared through the chest.
This is true. This is true.
So anyway, the Space Wolves arrive, and even they're unprepared and they're shocked. And Bringai again stopped in his tracks and feels a chill down his spine and thinks maybe that is the first time he's ever felt fear. But again, forgets that quickly and charges in with his men. Back at the holding cell, Moteb staggers out, having broken the word bearer and gaining his name. We know now that it is Altis, who's been left behind on the bench, gibbering a broken wreck. Exhausted from his efforts, he is absolutely like mortified as he feels this warp spawn presence on board, and he makes his way to the laser deck to weigh in and help. The guy with the flamer, he gets taken out by the warp spawn, and another Ultramarine gets wounded, and the apothecary runs down and kneels and starts treating the guy that's been injured. And now Cestus is shooting at multiple creatures as more have started to appear. One goes to impale him, but Cestus manages to dive out of the way. And unfortunately, the apothecary takes the brunt of it. And as this like tongue is inserted into him, it inserts these eggs into him, which burst inside him, and these horrible plague flies essentially burst out with razor-sharp wings that decimate this guy into mincemeat. Cestus is able to shoot these flies and kill them before they can get to anybody else. The two creatures now are wrecking the Ultramarines and Space Wolves. Ammo's running low, and Cestus orders them to form up and concentrate fire. And they pick on one target, and they're able to just hit everything, including plasma, and they take it out by shooting it through the eye, or its main eye, and this thing is propelled back out into the warp. But unfortunately, as that happens, it's blown into real space, and through that gap, 3 more creatures take its place. Cestus prepares himself to die as these spawn leap towards his men. But as they do, a bright crimson light appears and forces the creatures back. And from behind, Motep arrives and throws his spear directly into one of the beasts, killing it. Motep orders them to blind the beasts, and all bullets are fired at these beasts' eyes until they're able to take them down with the help of Motep's spear and his powers. And at the end, Cestus looks around, seeing that he lost 2 more men. He's got two more injured, but everyone else is okay. And Motep tells them that the beasts are gone and collapses. Yeah. So that puts us into chapter 13. And I would say that psychic power is not all bad.
I think it's helped out. It's definitely had its place, right?
Yeah, definitely. Bringar needs to. Hopefully, Bringar saw some of that anyway.
Well, I think it's in this part anyway that I think it's Cestus says it or thinks it, or it's mentioned at least anyway, that the reason the Space Wolves, the Bloodclaw, but particularly Bringar was doing so well was because his axe is obviously crafted by the rune priests of Fenris. Yeah. So, he, as a Space Wolf, that's not psychic stuff. That's the rune priests. That's the the readers of the weird. That's not psychic power. But it actually is. So he's using a psychic weapon, and that's why he was so successful. But because he doesn't see it as psychic, then that's okay. But Motep is very psychic, so that's not cool.
We've got a different name for it.
Yeah,
we don't like your name for it.
Yeah, it's these are rune priests that they're fancy weathermen. That's what they do. They do some wind and hurricanes and stuff like that. They carve a couple of runes onto something, and you're laughing.
Yeah. Cool. So, chapter 13, the legacy of Lorgar, proposition and honor jewel. So, on the Furious Abyss, Skrull is now the lone survivor. He's managed to get away from the word bearers and has found his way into some old abandoned parts of the ship from its early construction. So these would be like where the crew were sort of living and building out around them. So he finds like a bit of a torn down shanty town that's been abandoned. He stops and has a bit of a think about what's been going on and thinks of Antigus. And although he's not particularly a fan of the Ultramarines because they're more interested in, like, in his opinion, forging their own empire.
Yeah.
He's actually like impressed with Antigus, how he embraced his death and died essentially a hero, and stops for a minute's silence, honouring and swearing revenge for him. And he's eager to get on with it and put these melter grenades to good use. And eventually he comes out into a old sort of place of worship where he finds endless carvings and tapestries depicting Lorgar's arrival on his home planet of Colchis, and images depicting him conquering this ruined planet prior to the Emperor's arrival. And as he's sort of wandering around and getting ready to move on, the Vox comes to life over Tannoy. And Zadkiel tells him that that Skrull is now looking at the soul of the Legion. He introduces himself and welcomes Skrull aboard his ship. Skrull asks why this traitorous Legion is hiding behind words. And Zadkiel questions, saying, "Why do you think we're traitors? We've always been loyal to our Primarch." And Skrull calls Lorgar the traitor. And Zadkiel says, "Well, your own Primarch calls him a brother, so how could he be a traitor to you?" And Skrull tells him that Lorgar has even betrayed Angron, because Skrull hasn't been around Angron and doesn't know what's been going on elsewhere. He's not aware of the wider heresy, as we well all know. So in his eyes, only the word bearers have turned. And Zadkiel tells him now that Angron was always a slave and resents what has become of him, and the word bearers share this anger and call him brother. Zadkiel sees like the World Eater rage echoing from Angron into the rest of his legion because of the slaughter back on the back of docks, and compares and says, look, you're not too different from your Primarch, so you must understand like why he would, if he's happy to team with us, then you should be. And Skrull actually is a bit shocked because he thought that was just a little secret. He didn't realize that anybody saw him killing the innocent people. That was just like his way of getting the bloodlust up, and probably thinks maybe that's could be what gave the game away. But anyway, like we're past that now. Skrull doesn't care. Zadkiel keeps piling it on, telling him, look, other legions have always been taking advantage of Angron. He's always been used to clear the way and fight the battles for other Primarchs to step in and take the reward. And the World Eaters have always been suppressed. The same as the Word Bearers, we wanted to worship him as the Emperor as a god, but he mocked us and banned us from free speech. And instead of actually like resonating with Skrull, he reacts by smashing up some statue with his axe. And as he's like swinging around, he looks into a big display case, and inside is a huge axe called Brazen Tooth, which is actually his Primarch's axe. And this has been used to conquer worlds and is wrapped in the skin of like a great Xenos beast, which he killed with it. And it's apparent that Angron has gifted this to Lorgar as a sign of allegiance to his cause, which shakes like Skrull to his core. But instead of thinking about it, like his reaction, he tells Zadkiel that he talks too much, smashes this cabinet, picking up Brazen Tooth, which is far too big for him to reasonably be able to hold. Turns the power axe on and hurls it through a wall, smashing and creating a brand new way out. And he screams that Zadkiel's treachery will be discovered by the Emperor and he will be punished when the War Master is sent after him. He jumps into the hole, down into a web of cables and machinery, followed by the echo of Zadkiel's laughter.
Poor old Skrull.
No, his world has just been like turned upside down.
The thing is, it's like, you know, he's saying also like the War Master's going to come after you and stuff like this, and you know, old Zadkiel was like, no, I don't think he will.
No. And that's it. Like we said, like he's still loyal. Like he's got the choice, and we saw back in the earlier books there were loyal World Eaters that was quite happy to smash through. So there's a good chance that maybe Skrull would have been one of those.
Yeah, as I said, they had to purge nearly half their legions.
Yeah.
For what was it, Terran-born Astartes and Loyalist Astartes. So, you know, very, very true. Skrull may have been there, although the World Eaters definitely seem like a chapter that follows their Primarch. They're not, well, this comes up later in this, but they're not known for their strategic input.
No, they definitely swing the axe first, ask questions later.
Yeah. Or
just kill the innocents on the way to a battle. Why not?
Indeed, yeah. Get some of the bloodlust up by slaughtering some porters. The dude was just loading luggage.
Oh man. Skrull makes his escape from here, and Zadkiel turns to his chaplain Ikfalon and says, "Are we ready?" And says yes. So on the floor is a circle made from the soil of Colchis mixed with the blood drained from Antigus' body. The corpse lays next to it with the chest torn open with symbols marked out in his blood around the body. An astropath arrives and Zadkiel tells him to do what he needs to do. They've removed the scalp ready for him and promises the remains will be for the chaplain to use later. Zadkiel gives the astropath a book, and he skims his fingers across it, and he's amazed by the secrets that are contained within this. This book was written by Zadkiel himself, and the astropath asks him, "Who told you the secrets that you've written in this book?" And we find out it's an entity called Zorik, and they're going to honour this pact they finally made with him. Back on the raffle, once the dead have been taken to the morgue, repairs are underway, and Cestus is standing over Motep in the med bay, who has been unconscious ever since he fell down. And now the dilemma he has to face is Motep saved them twice, but he's used magic to do it.
Yeah.
Magic is bad. We don't like magic. But magic has saved them and has kept them on point to saving Macragge. And he's also got a very angry, hairy space wolf prowling around the ship. The word bearer has been broken. His secrets are out, but now the secrets are trapped in Motep's head. But before he can sort of make any decisions, Bringar growls and says, "On Fenris, we cut the tendons in the arms and legs of witches and throw them into the sea." And Cestus tells him that this isn't Fenris.
On Fenris, yeah.
A bit of a Buzz and Woody moment there.
Yeah.
And Bringar tells him that because of what Cestus has been doing, like his honor has been besmirched twice and he's not going to stand for it.
Yeah.
Tearing a rune from his armor and throwing it at Cestus's feet. Challenge accepted. So Bringar, then later, Bringar is waiting in a training pit in nothing but his training robes with his chain axe in hand. Cestus arrives wearing the same gear and they're both in the colours of their own legion.
Yeah.
The surviving Astartes are gathered solemnly watching, and the only non-Astartes present is Kaminska. And once both captains stand in the pit, Saphrax steps forward and announces the duel and says, "This honour duel is between Cestus of the Ultramarines and Bringar of the Space Wolves. The weapon is chain swords and the duel is to blood from the torso or incapacitation. Limb and eye loss counts as thus, as does a cut to the foot, the front of the throat.
Yeah.
No firearms and no armour. And obviously, it's not to the death." So the stakes are for the fate of Captain Motep of the Thousand Suns Legion, which is strange because obviously, if Cestus wins, like obviously Motep will be safe and they'll get the secrets out of him.
Yeah.
If Bringar wins, he's just going to kill him, like everything they've done so far is a bit of a wash.
Yeah, although Bringar might try and break him first and get the information out of him. Like he might just kill him, but he might also be like, we're gonna find out what you know, and then we're gonna kill you.
It didn't work too well with Altis, though, did it?
It's not gonna, either way. Bringar's plan is not gonna come off well.
No, he needs to calm down and go for a walk.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they're told to go to arms, and they're both actually like still worn out from this whole mission so far, and obviously they've just been fighting warp spawn, but they're they're space marines, so they are obviously superhuman, and they're ready to do this. Bringar starts off by launching into a powerful shoulder barge. Cestus tries to move out the way and twist that to avoid it, but he's too slow. Takes a glancing but painful blow and manages to keep his feet. Cestus has to stay on the defense because Bringar just is smashing powerful blow after blow towards him. And as they're getting close to the edge of the pit, Cestus goes for an early end, aiming a sweep at Bringar's torso, but he manages to deflect it and aims a sweeping arc back. And actually, that would have taken off Cestus's head if he hadn't moved in time. So at this point, Bringar's just like, he's just seeing red now. Like, almost Cestus is fighting for blood and survival now.
Old Bringar's gone a bit feral. Yeah.
And the thing is, if Bringar does kill him, all right, the Ultramarines probably aren't going to be too keen, but they're not going to be able to do too much.
No, this is all, this is all allowed.
Unprecedented times. So he swings this killing blow, which misses and lands on the floor, but smashes his power sword. So he tosses it aside, lunging, and throws a powerful uppercut into Cestus' jaw, and then punches him in the side of the head, hitting him in the ear.
He's kicking the crap out of him.
Yeah. He gets him again, like basically knocks him on his ass, wins him, and like Cestus comes to and realizes that Bringar's on top of him, choking him out.
Yeah.
And luckily he's able to like bash his forearms up, knocking his wrists away, and then knees him in the sternum, managing to get his grip loosened, and then headbutts him in the face to roll out the way, avoiding like more powerful blows. Like Cestus is trying to get his bearings back and trying to stop himself from blacking out, because he's obviously just had like the sides of his head caved in, and he wasn't he's not able to avoid a big backhand from Bringar, which sends him flying. And as he's about to pass out, he just breathes a word, yield, and Bringar freezes, fist clench, coming towards him, panting hard. And Cestus is pointing at him, and Bringar looks down and sees there's a thin trail of blood coming out of his stomach, and Cestus is holding a small knife in his hand.
He's holding one of the teeth from the broken chainsword.
Yeah, that's right. So it's declared blood from the torso. Cestus wins. It doesn't look like he's won.
Sounds like a technicality to me.
Yeah, they just got lucky. So it's almost like the gene seed or the gene flaw of the Space Wolves has been affected by like some of this dodgy space travel. The Gila field's been affected a few times, and it sort of feels like the Wolfen's coming out in him. Yeah,
he's going a little bit feral. I mean, that's at least that's what we're being led to believe.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think he went a little bit too far, and although he managed, he got yield, and he stopped.
He snapped out of it. Yeah, he still, and he does. I said we'll come on to it in a minute. He still honours the result. He still honours the duel. Mm. Would he have gone too far? Don't know, but he did stop. So it's clearly still got some, even in the middle of the battle, he's still got some grip on his faculties.
Yeah. So with the end of that duel, that puts us into chapter 14, Hunted, a single blow, and we are all alone. So time is always shifting in the warp. Skrull doesn't know if he's been on the run for hours or weeks. He's been crawling through dark, forgotten passageways in the depths of the abyss, keeping out of sight of the infrequent workers he comes across, always staying to the shadows, working on devising a plan on how to exact his revenge, cause enough damage to make a difference, or take this ship out. He stops in a crawl space for some time and meditates until he feels a presence, unsure what it is, other than sensing a shadow. He backs away into more darkness. So something's hunting him, but we don't know what. Zadkiel, he gets a report that the Raffle's still on their trail. He's not worried. He's got the ancient creature Zorik working with him, and the earlier horrors unleashed on the Ultramarines will be nothing compared to what is to come. He and Rezko are standing in the chamber of another dead astropath who died whilst translating a message. Zadkiel's decoding the message. He scolds Rezkiel for not capturing the World Eater yet, and then tells him that Corferon is near in Calf, where the entire Ultramarine Legion is mustering, apart from several detachments that aren't there, and they vow to exterminate the Legion in this next attack. Back on the Raffle, Cestus has spent his time meditating and training, trying to recover from the last battles, and especially the battle and the injuries suffered from Bringar. They've had no sign of the Furious Abyss for some time, and things have not been easy, and the tension is only getting worse on board. The laser deck has been sealed off. There's been another 17 deaths.
There's a lot of death at the moment. Yeah, there's a lot of not very happy crew, and everyone's quite pleased not to go back to the what's it called, the battery deck, because they don't need the lasers right now anyway.
No,
and it was very much the inside of a Hellraiser film or Event Horizon or something like that. So they definitely don't want to be there.
No way. And obviously the warp madness has taken over because they've had suicide, apparent accidents, and apparently there's a murder.
Been a few deaths
still on the loose. So anarchy. Anyway, so he's lost in thought, but brought back to reality when he gets a painful smack to the side of the head from Saphrax, and realizes that they're actually still mid-spar session and he's just zoned out. And Cestus gives him the signal to stop. And sort of Saphrax is concerned that he's captain is distracted because it's not normal. And he says, look, the Emperor will find us through this. Just keep your faith and we'll make it. And Cestus is thankful, but as good as a friend or a battle brother that Saphrax is, he's not as close with him as he was with Antigus, and obviously he's worried about what's going on with him at the minute. Worried that he's obviously lost him, not knowing that he's dead. And he thanks him and says, I've got somewhere to go. Elsewhere, Bringar has banished his blood claws back to the barracks, and he's alone in his quarters and drunk more than his fair share of Wolfsmead. And although it's almost impossible for an Astartes, this guy is absolutely hammered. Cestus walks in and tells him that I know what's happened, but I still need your strength, and I need you to abide by the honor duel. Bringar agrees, but tells him that, look, if you cross me again, there won't be an honor duel to decide anyone's fate. And Cestus leaves, satisfied that Bringar's still in the fight, but feel like everything that's happened has cost their friendship.
Yeah, he's a bit upset by all of that, because like Bringar says, like, you want my my courage and my sword, but you don't want my counsel. Like, you're not listening to me. Obviously, you know, we know why he's not listening to him, but obviously that's the bit that's besmirched the pride of the old warrior, and that's what's caused their relationship to now kind of break down.
Yeah, and it's happened, like, obviously, like when we first introduced to both of them, they were well happy to see each other because they're old friends from a number of battles, and obviously, like we've seen in some of the other books, you go through one war with someone from another legion, and that makes you battle brothers, and it's not just something that's said loosely. Even if they don't see each other for 100 years, you've always got that going on. Yeah. Like when they've got the two halves of a friendship bracelet. So essentially, like, Bringar's thrown his away, which is a shame, like, because obviously they take, like, brotherhood quite seriously. Yeah. And it's another hardship to get over with the treachery of the word bearers. So anyway, Bringar finds another barrel and downs that, slumps on the floor, and sort of in a drunken flashback to his trials on Fenris. I think they call it the blooding, where they're left to survive in the icy wilderness and forced to find their way back to the Fang. Yeah. And during his journey, as I think many are, they're stalked by a wolfen, and this one sort of approached him, but never got too close, but was watching him the entire way. And now he's alone, drunk, he's hallucinating. The same wolfen telling him, "You're all alone," and throws down a pistol from his past, carved from the bones of a great beast that he managed to kill in the mountains. So something weird's going on with Bringar now. Like, he's seeing things that he shouldn't be seeing. He's obviously had too much to drink, and the warp is a dangerous place to be. It is, especially when you're emotional.
There's a lot of things going on in the warp, and we are all alone. Very emo. Poor old Bringar.
Well, I mean, Astartes are pretty emo anyway, aren't they? Like, it's all dad problems.
This is true. This is true. But he's definitely encapsulating it right now, like drinking his sorrows away and making outlandish, emotional, grandiose statements about the nature of life and being alone.
He's one step from painting his room black.
I was going to say, it's on the cards.
So elsewhere, Moteb, he's dreaming of wars led by the Emperor, but he can't make sense of what he's seeing or where they're taking place, and everything's confusing. He snaps awake and finds himself back in the isolation chamber. He sees Cestus standing there at the end, and Cestus tells him, "It's good to have you back." Motep is curious why he's in a cell rather than in the med bay, but obviously realizes that no one trusts him anymore. No. Cestus approaches him and asks, "What was you able to learn from Altis?" And Motep tells him, "I'll show you." And suddenly leaps up, ramming the palm of his hand onto Cestus's forehead. And into chapter 15, Desecration, communion and the visions of death. So, coming away from Motep, we go back to Skrull. He's made his way back up into the depths of the ship, back to where he last left Antigus, and finds his remains. The body has been desecrated, and if it wasn't for the Ultramarines' insignia, it would be impossible to tell who it was. As he's contemplating what to do next, voices and footsteps put him on the alert, and he backs into the shadows. Reskill, Ikphalon, and a group of acolytes enter and gather up the remains of the Ultramarines' body. And as they leave, Skrull stalks them through the halls. And they finally come out into an atrium where there's like a viewing gallery above, and they lay the body on a surgical slab in the center of the room.
Yeah.
Under the orders of the chaplain, the acolytes begin taking apart the corpse of Antigus, and Ikphalon questions Reskill as to where the head has gone. And to his annoyance, Reskill tells him that Zoric required the head. Obviously, Ikphalon's annoyed and voices his displeasure at having to bow to the forces of the warp, and Reskill snaps at him and tells him that he should know his place. Ikphalon snaps back, calls him a suck-up to Zadkiel, and kiss ass, because we know where everybody stands on this ship. And as even like, obviously, Zadkiel's obviously in charge, and he's got his loyal suck-ups who even he doesn't like, and then he's got in Ikphalon the people who don't like him but are doing it anyway, and then they're all bickering below decks when he's not around. So they have a bit of an argument over that, and says, look, Reskill goes to argue back with him, but Ikphalon tells him to think about the fate of those who are left behind at the back of docks under Zadkiel's leadership. So obviously, like we were saying, if he doesn't like you, or you're just a number to him, really, he doesn't really care
at all.
No. So he's given up his share of the Astartes Zoric, and will use the rest of it to divine their path. He looks at Antigus' hand and asks for more body parts. It's not enough. And the acolyte uses a laser cutter to split open his chest, and through the hole pulls out the entrails. Sorry, he doesn't pull them out. Ikphalon sticks his hand into the hole and is playing with the loose entrails, and pulls out some gore, laying it down onto the slab and stares into it. And in a bit like a witch doctor sort of thing. Yeah. And he sort of stares into it for a while, and then he's able to sort of divine what's going on and says, Macragge, they suspect nothing. I can't see Calf, but I can sense that Corferon will be able to forge his own path, and that Gilliman appears now to be merely a man and not a Primarch. And then he stares deeper into the innards for a moment longer before saying, we are not alone. Reskill whips up his bolter, and 4 word bearers burst in. They spread out, and Skrull sneaks through the shadows. He wants to feel rage, and he wants to fight, but all he can feel is numb, and backs away from this fight. So I don't know if we've seen anything like that from anybody before. I don't know if sort of that divination's a thing common prior to the heresy?
I don't know. It's an interesting one because it's obviously he's the chaplain, right? And various Skrull says it as well. He's seen like various cultures do different bits and pieces, and various bits of barbarism. And earlier on, is it Zadkiel? Like he obviously one of the what's it called? Navigators, one of the psychic navigators who dies. Like he transcribes all of the scrawl of that person left on like in blood and ichor. I think the other thing with the word bearers is while they've been on this, because they've fallen already, right? The word bearers are already chaotic. As soon as they fell, they started practicing the old traditions of cultists, and I think that's what this is. So I think it's more to do with that, which comes out in a bit more detail in I think it's the first heretic, which is coming up. But I think it's more to do with that. So you're right.
Okay.
Like we've definitely not come across Astartes doing any divination, but it's a very chaos thing to do, and I think it's part of the old ways of cultures.
Fair enough. I couldn't imagine the Emperor ever approving of it.
I don't think he's not keen on it.
You can get away with a lot or specific things, but I don't think that's on the list.
No. Can't get your lottery numbers from pulling someone's gut out.
Right. Okay. So first heretic, we're not too far away from getting to that as well. Actually,
no, we're not far off.
No. Okay. So hopefully we'll get to that then. Cool. So as we know, Motep's showing Cestus the way. Cestus is now tumbling through space and floating above one of the moons of Macragge called Formasca.
That's it.
He sees a missile impact on the moon, causing it to explode, sending debris hurtling towards Macragge. He sees something move through the debris towards the planet, releasing deadly gases amongst the population. He sees the Ultramarine fleet wiped out by a meteor storm. He sees his Primarch and Legion brothers mustered on Calth, and then in the heart of an enemy ship, a payload of World Eater virus. He repeatedly calls out Gilliman's name until he snaps back to the present. He's staggered by this and hisses at Motep, asking what he just did to him, and Motep says, "I've showed you the truth." Cestus pulls his pistol out, points it at Motep's head, asks, "Is what you just showed me real?" And Motep tells him that it is. The word bearers do not want to destroy Macragge or Calth. They want to wipe out the Ultramarines and take the planets as their own. The destruction of Formasca is where it will begin. Stunned, Cestus lowers his weapon, stares at Motep and asks him, "Why are you here?" And Motep tells him that he's seen the line of fate. He knows that his fate lays with this ship. And before he even encountered the Furious Abyss, he knew that he was destined to go to Macragge. His legion, the Thousand Sun, is cursed with a psychic mutation. Magnus has taught them how to harness this, but the Edict of Nicaea wounded Magnus like any scolding of a father would wound a child. Motep wants to help fix this wound and open the Ultramarines' eyes to the ability of good, of the power of psychic energy, and how they can use it against the enemies of the Imperium. Estus keeps a stern face and says, "You saved us on the Lance deck, and you probably did the same when the Fireblade attacked, but your ambition overreaches you. I've stayed Bringar's hand long enough, and I will not do it again. When we make it to Macragge, you will face trial, and if you ever invade my mind again, I will kill you." Motep calls him ignorant, narrow-minded, and they part ways. And that ends chapter 15.
Yeah, bit of a tough one, that. You kind of... I feel sorry for Motep to a degree. It is in this point that he mentions that Nicaea was never a council, it was a trial.
Yeah.
Which I think is widely agreed upon. And again, it's the usual sort of stuff, right? It's, you go back to, like, if the Emperor had said what he was up to the entire time, Magnus wouldn't have done what he did. So, hashtag Magnus did nothing wrong comes up again. But, obviously the Thousand Sons, they're struggling. All of this comes from, like, Lorgar going the way he is because he gets upset that the Emperor won't let him be worshipped. Magnus gets upset that he's not allowed to do his magic tricks.
Mm-hmm.
And all of it is if the Emperor just said a little bit more, none of this would have happened. But there we go. Or maybe it was all supposed to happen. That's the other thing. It's all supposed to have happened. So yeah, it was a tough one. Like, I think Motep has kind of showed Cestus the way, but Cestus, now with knowing it, also knows, like, this is all very psychically attuned. So, God knows how it's going to end. And the introduction of Formasca as kind of a staging post or the launching point of whatever's going to go on is going to become quite crucial as the story goes on.
Yeah, that's the key goal now for when we come into episode 4 for us. That's going to be the main sort of what we're going to be orbiting around.
Yes.
Excuse the pun. Yeah. So the mission's not been too successful so far. Still, we've lost another good chunk of Marines, mostly Ultramarines, I think.
I think
blood claws.
We've got, I think, last count, I don't know, we probably lost another 3-ish of the honor guard. So there's probably 6 or 7 left. Obviously, the World Eaters are all gone now anyway.
Yeah.
And then you've got another couple of the blood claws. So you're probably maybe they're down to half strength. So there's 10 or so of them.
Yeah.
So there's about 15, maybe 20 at a push Marines left of the original 50.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely not going Cestus's way.
No,
because he's chasing after this ship that he can't catch, that is seemingly, well out in front and is doing what it needs to do, and for whatever reason, they just can't catch it, and they're being harassed by the warp, by unfavorable activity, and even by the warp's just long-term effects on everyone involved. So it's meandering a bit. They're kind of at a point where they're like, was it? Everyone's full of doubt. Was it the right course of action? Are we actually ever going to get, to actually intervene or have any real impact on this?
Yeah.
And in the meantime, while all that's going on, the word bearers are doing all sorts of voodoo stuff with corpses and the leftover dead from the back of docks. Something is something very dodgy is going on with the word bearers, and it's all going to come to a head in the next part, I think.
I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, it'd be a very, very good, thrilling conclusion to the action.
Yeah. So for those watching or listening, obviously, as always, we want to know what you think about it. So drop us a comment down below, or come over onto our Facebook page and come talk to us on there. It's a little bit easier. So look forward to hearing from you guys. So we'll wrap it up, I think.
Yeah.
Do you want to do the honours?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, as John mentioned, we're all over social. We're very very friendly and very happy to have a chat and also listen to any feedback. So obviously, you can get us on Instagram at iron_and_ceramite. But if you just have a search for it, you'll find it. Also, if you use the hashtag, we'll share you on the channel as well and on Insta. As I said, that hashtag gets quite a lot of use these days. There's a lot of good stuff on there. You can check out our meager efforts with painting. We're all giving it a go. We're all learning, so come and check out what we're up to. Likewise on Facebook, again, search Iron and Ceramite. We've got the group on there. More than happy to jump in, have conversations, and there's a few other guys on there as well that are doing the same thing. Likewise, Twitter. Again, you could search Iron and Ceramite, or we are at iCeramite. Obviously, we're more likely to engage on Insta and Facebook, to be honest. But if you message us, we'll definitely get back. But if it's your channel of choice, if it's your social network of choice, you can obviously follow us there. YouTube, you can of course search Iron and Ceramite, where you'll not only find the Librarius Omnis, where we go for everything that is the Horus Heresy. Maybe at some point in the future, when we're old and grey, we might move on to one of the other Black Library series, but that could be a way off yet. We also have our main podcast, which we do. I think it's monthly at the moment, isn't it, John? We do a monthly one, or is it every couple of weeks?
It's it's as and when we can fit it in. We try and do it every 2 weeks, but
try and do it every 2 weeks.
There's 5 of us, and we all work, so it's as and when. But we're doing all right.
But there's good stuff on there. We're going through a bit of a faction focus at the moment, so everyone's kind of going through their one of the factions they're collecting and going through a bit of history. So it's definitely an interesting place to pick up. We've got hobby bashing, where you've got a few little videos on there with hints and tips on what to do, weighted bases, your own wet palette, all very, very good. Tommy, one of our guys, is very good at doing those. So maybe the rest of us will one day get through to doing one, but hobby bashing's always worth a look. And then Archaeotech Assimilation, which is definitely getting a bit more content now. I mean, it had a few bits beforehand with John. You had your Death Guard Space Marine Heroes box set unveiling, which was really good. But alongside that, we've also got a few more discussions now about some of the stuff that's coming out with Warhammer Plus. So, follow us for our opinions on that. It's looking good at the moment. I haven't had a chance to really look into it too much, but it's on in my queue of what to watch. So definitely interested to hear your thoughts. And likewise, if you listen to this rather than watch it, Spotify, Apple, all good podcast services. Again, search Iron and Ceramite. On Twitch, we are also Iron and Ceramite, all one word. You can see John's attempts of playing Space Marine, one of the best Warhammer 40k games you can get hold of. And I'm sure we'll do more of it when we get there. Then if you really want to help us out, if you want to support us, you want to make this a bit better, want my headphone audio quality to go up, you can always sub to us on Patreon, where anything you do give us will obviously go straight back into the channel. Likewise, we're affiliated with Element Games, so if you are going to be buying anything for the hobby, if you are already or got something to look out for, use our link, and it just gives us a bit of a kickback. Like I said, you're going to be buying it anyway, you're going to be getting a good discount, you may as well help us out too. So give that a click. And then finally, if you are into combat cards, obviously the app available on iOS and Android. If you are using combat cards, if you do play it, then join our clan and see whether or not you can take myself and Glenn down, who seem to rule the roost at the moment. Although Glenn does seem to always pip me at the last, which he did this month as well. So try and take him off the top spot.
Yeah, man. So if you can't tell from all of that, we just want to talk about Warhammer as much as we can. So find us, talk to us about Warhammer, because that's all we've got going on now.
Yeah, it really is.
So anyway, thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you in the conclusion in part 4. See you next time.
As always, we would like to thank you for listening to our Iron and Ceramite podcast. If you liked us, then you can also find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and any other good podcast services. Just remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.